Revenue Group, and I want to share with you the biggest mistake salespeople and sales teams make. And this mistake is kind of crazy because it's probably the last thing you'd expect, but it has the biggest impact on whether prospects convert into clients or not. So before I get to that, I'm gonna tell you kind of a story that I think illustrates it well. I want you to imagine yourself as being a supervisor on an assembly line. So let's imagine on this assembly line, you're making cars. You're making, there's a Nissan in front of us. So let's say it's a Nissan. And you're watching your assembly line, and you're watching the Nissans being built, the wheels put on, and all that going down the line. And you have an employee who runs up to you and says, "Hey boss, we got a problem. Every one of these Nissan Rogues coming off the line, their lug nuts are loose. There's a problem." So you say, "Okay, what are we doing about it?" And he says, "Well, what we're doing is we're taking every one and we're fixing them. What do you want us to do? Should we stop the line? How should we proceed?" Now, as a supervisor, you've got really two options, right? You've got these broken cars, basically these faulty cars coming off the line. Option number one is you can keep doing what they're doing, right? Every broken car that comes off the line, which is going to be every one, take it, wheel it off into the shop, fix it, and then do whatever you're going to do with it, right? Ship it off to the dealerships. Or option number two is you can stop the assembly line, find where those wheels are being put on, find where the mistake's being made, find where the defect is actually happening, right? And then fix the machine or the process or whatever it is right there in the assembly line, and then turn it back on, and all the cars should roll off perfectly functional, right? So which would you do if you were the supervisor in this case? You know, I ask this question in every one of the sales trainings we do with sales teams across the country as we kind of kick off and start the training. And unanimously, every single time, all the salespeople and business owners in the room or online always say, "Well, simple, I just fix the process," right? I'd fix the assembly line and then we never have to worry about it again. It's much more efficient. So I want to bring this back to sales and the biggest mistake that salespeople make and that business owners make. What they do is when they have a problem with sales, when they want more sales, they start to focus on closing, right? They buy books, they learn new closes, they hire salespeople that can close. Well, that's a mistake, and I'll tell you why. That's exactly like the assembly line. Trying to close more people, trying to implement a new close into your sales process, that's just like fixing that broken vehicle after it's off the assembly line. You see, when you don't get a closed deal, what it means is that process, the conversation, everything that happened up to that point, up to the end of the sales call, something there is broken. When deals don't close, it's for one of two reasons. Either you haven't motivated the prospect enough, and you can motivate prospects to take action. You can create an urgency to take action. In our training, we spend like 3 weeks talking about that. And there can also be hidden what I call deal killers. So even if they're super motivated to take action, there's usually some type of fear that's holding them back. That fear is usually around relationships or risk or discomfort or the money piece or something around there. So if you don't cover those two topics all the way, right? The motivation piece and the deal killers piece, and you get to the end of the sales call, you're going to get something like a maybe or a think it over or let me pray on it or think about it or something to that effect. It means the process is broken. No close you throw at that is really going to do anything. In fact, it'll actually hurt your chances of closing the deal. The reason is if you try to close them at this point, what do we do? I want you to ask yourself, what do you do when you get closed, when a salesperson puts on the pressure? I'll tell you what, you probably do one of two things. You shut down. That might mean you end the sales call, you find a reason to get out of there, you make an excuse, you get hostile and push back, right? You do one of those things, right? You either hide or you push back. You get hostile or you hide. And that's not going to lead to a sale either. So the second you start closing and putting on the pressure, your chances of actually closing a deal go down significantly. We know from the Huthwaite study of 35,000 sales calls over 12 years that the more a salesperson tries to close a deal, the less likely they are to do it. And that's the reason why. So the number one mistake that salespeople and sales teams across the country make is they focus on closing. You can Google the internet right now and find 1,000 books on closing. If that's what you're doing, if that's what you've done, what you've probably already realized is that does not get you any better results, no matter what close you try. And the reason is because your sales process is broken. When the sales process is fixed, when it's working, when it's intact, then the close happens naturally. That close rolls off the assembly line. The prospect closes themselves. You know, if you've been on one of my sales calls, you know this, that the only close I've ever used in my life, or at least for the last 15 years, has been, what would you like to do? And at that point, we always get a very clear yes. If the deal's closable, or if it's not closable, we're gonna get a very clear no, and we're gonna know the exact reason why. So for business owners, sales teams, salespeople out there, I hope this helps. Stop focusing on closing, start focusing on process. And if you do that, the close will happen naturally. This is John Martinez with Midwest Revenue Group. See you later.